Welcome to another episode of Times and Tides. Uma, I know you have been talking about quinine rather. Where it started? Where is quinine from? Which plant it is from?
Quinine is a South American plant or tree coming from a tree called, it's pronounced as cinchona or cinchona.
But I think the cinchona is a later term because, local name may be
local
something
is
else.
quina
Okay,
and all this
yeah.
stuff. And there are different stories, just like, we just now had some confusion or rather debate about how tea sort of. So these are all mired in some sort of early stories.
So, the reason I told you the later name is the Countess of Cinchona.
Yeah, that comes, there is a story attributed to that.
You are going to tell about that?
Yeah, in the sense, the early history, if you now look at about this quina, right? See, there was no Latin name for that.
Okay.
So it was locally known as quina, and there's a story again. These are all anecdotal about how this quina, the pool, the water pools around this quina tree apparently was infused by this alkaloid.
Okay.
Incidentally, we talked about an alkaloid in tea. And here there's yet another alkaloid, that is quinine. And people used to drink water out of that pool, and if they had fever, that fever would sort of vanish. And so that was the first sort of, in some way, correlate of something contained in this quina bark or tree or whatever that is.
Actually contained in the water, but which is because of the tree.
So that is the story part. Another story is attributed to the Countess of Cinchona of Spain, who sort of was in Peru for some while. And she fell ill, and people suggested that she take this one, and she was cured. And because she was cured, people now sort of went back, and then the Latinization.
She apparently carried some bark back to Spain. Yeah.
Went back to Spain. And then, of course, the name sort of was attributed after the Countess of Cinchona.
Okay.
So this is the early story of the quinine, and the fact that there is something in this bark of this tree which the local people use, powder it, make some sort of fusion of it, and then drink it, which now cures all sorts of fever. Not necessarily only malarial fever, but all sorts of fever. So febrile and all of that.
Which is why it was also called the fever bark tree.
Fever bark tree. Right.
So they didn't specifically relate that to malaria in the beginning.
Yeah, any fevers as a
Any fever. And malarial fever, as you know, is quite
Distinct,
very
And
distinct.
it was
so,
one of the biggest scourges in the world. And most armies wouldn't have been able to survive in Africa, India, many other places if they didn't have
The quinine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the story is that once it went to Spain, and the Spaniards sort of had the knowledge of that. From then, of course, it sort of traveled to different parts of Europe. Basically, it sort of went to Dutch, the Portuguese, and of course to the British. And thereafter, the entire story sort of takes root. Now, to cut the long story short, what did it do? Now, through the systematic use of this bark, people came to know in Europe that by then people had more knowledge that it is very effective against malarial fever. Not just any fever, but against malarial fever. So this was seen as a very potent sort of shield for the British and for the colonists, as he just now mentioned, to make inroads into places that they have probably never set foot for the fear of the malarial sort of infestation.
Okay.
In fact, I would say one of the most important, breakthrough was the entry into Africa. No one dared, the white man, as they say, no one dared to go to Africa, not for any other reason, but for the
Malaria. I think Africa was considered as some death trap or so for the white people.
Absolutely. In fact, it's called the white man's graveyard.
White man's graveyard. Okay.
It's called the white man's graveyard famously.
Yeah.
And there were very few explorers that went into Africa. And one of the most notable one was David Livingstone that we all know of. Now he was in some way a missionary, a adventurer, a very good man by the way, who wanted to explore the land in a very naive way, should I say. And in fact, he was also responsible in many parts to abolish slavery in many parts of Africa.
Later though.
Later.
Was he the first fellow to introduce quinine to
Yeah.
African continent?
In fact, that's right. In fact, he knew about quinine, Livingstone, and then he knew that it is able to sort of take him through all of these places, escape the malaria. By the way, white are more susceptible; they succumb more to this one, to malaria, than the.
Why is this difference? Why is that white men are so weak to malaria compared to the people in the tropics?
See, there are several theories, Ganesha. One of them is that there is, of course, selection. Now, the parasite that causes
there is a resistance built in the Africa. Okay.
Absolutely. Now, the malaria is caused by the by Plasmodium.
Okay.
And now you may be resistant to the Plasmodium infection than the white. And so there are many such theories, but I would say there's not one single that sort of pins out that they are different. In fact, there are hundreds and millions of Africans who die of malaria.
Okay.
So in this context, in fact, quinine was not known in Africa. And so in some way, the British, through their inroads into Africa, introduced, should I say, inadvertently, the use of quinine into the African.
So they brought exclusively for their purpose.
For their purpose. So as I mentioned, in the let us say, dates around, maybe around 1820 or 1830s, thereabouts, when British armies would go into West Africa and other places of Africa, the average mortality of the soldiers was as high as 50%. 50% of the people would die not of anyone else's bullet or arrows or whatever, just because of malaria.
So the parasite killed more than the bullet.
Absolutely.
I see.
50% is a staggering amount. Now, about 30 years later, when quinine was introduced into Africa through all of them, the percentage mortality reduced to less than about 5%.
I see.
Now imagine now what sort of implication this would have had on the British, on the success of the colonists in going into, especially the great equatorial rainforest of Africa, from West Africa to East.
And so even the common man also would now love to come to Africa. And
Absolutely. So this marked a great sort of change, transformative, which opened up Africa to the British colonizers.
Other Western colonizers.
Western colonizers. There was a turning point again here. See, until around 1820s or 30s, the British were all dependent upon the tree bark from South America.
Okay.
But during the early 1800s, this compound was chemically synthesized. Since you mentioned opium a while ago, opium, which is again an alkaloid, morphine, was the first chemical compound to ever be synthesized from a plant.
Okay.
The first plant alkaloid, the total chemical synthesis in lab was
extracted or synthesized?
Synthesized. After the chemical structure was elucidated, it was the first plant alkaloid ever to be synthesized.
Okay.
Soon followed.
Who did that? Who did this?
The opium was done. Quinine was done by French. Opium was done by German chemists.
I see.
But centrally, I mean, at that time, the chemistry, the synthesis art was really picking up. And in fact, I would say that was a birth of the golden days of synthetic organic chemistry in Europe.
Okay.
So what happened is now, after the synthesis of this one, they did not have to depend on sourcing the quinine from the bark of cinchona plant or tree from. So they freed themselves from the dependence on the tree itself and got this manufactured, chemically synthesized.
Wait a minute. Can I interject here?
Yeah.
I am told that British actually planted the quinine plants in India.
I'll come to that.
Okay. If the chemical is there, why did they plant? Yeah.
This was, in time you'll have to now look at what is the sort of progression that it is making. But then they had access to now this white compound, which actually is not white, little dull brown compound that they could have it in their hand.
Okay.
Besides, of course, the powder that were coming. Now, because of all of this, what happened? Directive was given by their army general that any soldier, for the matter, any British civilian servant working in all of these colonies, it was compulsory, mandated that they should now take this powder or the compound.
Irrespective of whether they have malaria or not.
Yeah, as a
Preventive.
preventive.
I see.
As a preventive.
Uh-huh.
It's like, taking the COVID shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a vaccine, but here it is simply okay.
But the problem is, this was terribly, all alkaloids are bitter, by the way. And this was terribly bitter. And so they used to sort of lace it with a little bit of sugar and all of that in the beginning.
I guess British should have laced it with some alcohol.
Then came, as you rightly told, very correctly, alcohol in the form of gin.
I see. Okay.
So they now started lacing gin with a little bit of this quinine and then mixing it up and adding and then drinking it. Soon, this sort of proportion of mixing of gin
Concoction.
and this quinine in the form of powder, or what is later, it was going to be called as tonic water. It was called tonic water. And these two were combined to give a drink which was, a little tolerable.
Okay. The original bitter powder.
Yeah, yeah. In fact,
It's
there's
like
a
sugar
great
coating the pill.
sugar coating the
Yeah.
pill.
Right.
Okay. Alcohol.
A little improvisation of that, I'm zipping a little forward, of the drink was that they would also add a little bit of lime, a little bit of sugar. So you have essentially 4 components in that.
Acha.
Gin, you know that very well. Second is your quinine,
Quinine.
which is called tonic water.
Yeah.
Third
Lemon.
is sugar, and fourth is lime.
I see.
This concoction became so nice and sort of palatable that it became one of the, I would say, very important discovery drink, which is lasting even today. It is called gin tonic.
Now I'm tempted to ask the question.
Without the quinine, right?
With the quinine.
Today.
With the quinine.
Today.
And yes.
I see.
Which is actually a surprising thing. So the gin...
Now 1 minute. I am tempted to ask a question. Was it also the source of origin of all the mocktails?
I don't know.
Okay.
Possibly. But Dr. Natesh is asking a very interesting question, whether it still contains quinine.
Acha.
And I resist into that. And it appears the gin tonic that you get, by the way, it is called G&T.
Okay.
G&T is a very, very important drink in all parts of Europe and America. So you go to a bar and ask for G&T, not gin and tonics. That's too long. G&T. That's a brand.
Okay.
The
And
gin
it
and tonic
contains quinine.
contains quinine, contains gin and the tonic water in 1:1 proportion or 1:3 proportion or whatever. You can now sort of mix. It contains quinine even now, but at smaller amount. Why does it contain? It gives that bitter kick, the little sort of kick.
Like in beer, you add this.
Yeah. Okay.
So the present day gin tonic still contains quinine.
So it's a relic of the
Yes.
quinine gin tonic. Okay.
Which was actually used by the British.
Okay, let's come back to this now. So
So
they discovered
the
this.
gin tonic was discovered, and as I told, it became a mandatory sort of drink before any soldier were to go to those forests, the swamps, and all of that to conquer the rainforest of Africa, then Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. So this became therefore one
So
big
it was
turning
used in
point.
Southeast Asia also.
Yes.
So perhaps in India also. then.
India also. So from Africa, we now come to India. So quinine made its way into India as well, with of course the British who now came in with their company, and of course later the British Empire itself. Now here's an interesting story. You asked me the question about Cinchona plantations in India.
Yeah.
So now quinine is of course costly, but they also went through the art of making all of this compound. But to get from the chemical synthesis the quinine, or to extract the quinine from the bark, it's a cost effective
Benefit
sort of.
cost, yeah.
So they decided, why not cultivate these trees here in India, get the bark and extract the quinine.
Okay.
So in that process, they decided to now get the
Plantations.
seeds from South America. again, the most instrumental agency here, just like I think you mentioned about Fortune,
Yeah.
Robert Fortune. This guy was associated with the Royal Botanical Gardens in Kew.
So he was a botanist.
He was a botanist.
He went as a
Yeah.
okay in
Even
disguise.
Fortune was a botanist.
Yeah,
He
Fortune
worked for
was
the
a-
Royal Horticulture Society. They
Incident-
commissioned him.
Yeah. Incidentally, Royal Botanical Garden at Kew was served as some sort of a nursery of biopiracy of
Achha.
plants from all parts of the world.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
The Kew Botanical Garden was started by some king, right?
Yes, it is called the Royal
Royal.
Botanic Garden.
Yeah.
It is one of the most ancient
Okay.
thing, although it's not the oldest.
It's
The
okay,
oldest
yeah.
was in Padua, Italy.
Yeah.
But this is verily what is called the Mecca for all botanists, because the number of the collections that they
Yeah.
have, the knowledge.
Okay.
Data.
Yeah, because what I remember is that the Kew Botanical Garden started actually as a horticultural garden for a palace, and eventually one of the prince converted that into a
But
garden.
it was expressly meant, as he said,
Yeah.
to also house plants and acclimatize them from various parts
of
of
the
their
world.
world
Okay.
where they held colonies.
Okay.
Bring them and help their economy.
Okay.
That is why expeditions
Yes.
were sent
Okay.
to
So,
different
in
corners.
fact,
of the world.
they sort of in a way practiced this entire thing in such a professional manner, systematically, where they would now, as you mentioned, send expeditions to all parts of the world, get whatever is interesting for them, whether ornamental or medicinal and so on and so forth, acclimatize, evaluate all of them, and then match what plants have to go to which part of their colony.
Okay.
In some heuristic way. Okay, I need to now send this one there. Lantana camera, for example, was actually born out of experiment in the Royal Botanical Gardens.
Okay. So, in other words, the plants were now collected by the botanical garden and they were introduced into India in the form of plantations.
In form of
The
plantation.
one guy who was singularly responsible for this was Sir Joseph Banks when he was the president of the
Absolutely.
Royal Society.
Okay, okay.
He is single-handedly responsible in many ways.
Okay.
As a guy who sent expeditions to various parts of the world, got people deliberately to send them back to Kew,
Yeah.
and that is how they built up the might of the British Empire.
Okay. So, where were this planted in
So,
India?
the plantation started in 2-3 places. One is in Nilgiris, in Ooty, Uttakamand, as I say. That was first.
Okay.
And then they also went and planted this in Silguri, that is between Silguri and Gangtok.
This is the one you told you once visited.
Yes,
Quinine. I
yes.
see. Okay.
So they now had this plantation. In fact, it's still standing there.
I see.
Syncona.
The Quinine plantation.
Yeah.
Rungpo or something. it
Yeah,
was.
I don't remember the exact name, but if you now take the road from Silguri to Gangtok
Acha.
through Bagdogra, you will find this on the road, and it's now, I think, under the care of the forest department.
Okay.
The earlier older one is in the Nilgiris.
Nilgiris,
Somewhere near Gudalur.
Yeah.
Near Gudalur. I see.
Unfortunately, this was not a big success. The plants did not grow as well
As in South Africa.
as in South America.
South America.
Now remember, this is the same sort of experiment that the British did for rubber.
I see.
And rubber, they succeeded in parts of Western Ghats and the Northeast.
Almost in the entire Southeast Asia, perhaps. Yeah.
And I'm talking about now India, but
India,
these
okay.
two parts. But Syncona did not do so well. In fact, the plantation that I saw, maybe about 10-15 years back I visited, it could have been about maybe 90 years old, I don't know. But it wasn't great.
Okay.
It hadn't gotten the girth that we would expect it to and all that.
Okay.
So, it was not that they made a great amount of quinine, from these plants, and they were still dependent upon the
Synthetic.
chemicals that was now commercially available, and they would now have this and take into these places and further on to certain other parts of the Southeast Asia that they would go on to conquer.
I do remember either Natesh or you telling that in India, this quinine packets were being sent through post office also.
Yes. So once the quinine became, available, once they had also established themselves,
Okay.
they have colonized the place.
Okay.
And it was available now to all and sundry.
Okay.
common man or people who could afford, not that common man, I'm saying the people who could afford. So you could now order the quinine from whatever the central office is, and they would be now sent to people in by post offices in packets
I see.
or small packets.
So the Amazon had started long time back.
In a way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Place order and you get through the post. I see.
So there is a little.
And anyone could have placed order for that.
Yes, but though anyone could have placed orders, it is not known well, but it is also suggested that not everyone could have access to this one.
Okay.
Probably only the elite and those who had influence could now get. And for the larger masses, as they say, it wasn't something that was freely available to be freely administered.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why people also claim that at some time, if Britain, that is the British Empire, could have done it, they could have saved about 3 million lives that were going to die. Anyway, they died. If only this was given, they could have saved a large proportion of their life because they were again getting the malarial fever.
Okay.
So I would like to just mention one thing which I think is very, very, should I say, today accepted. Now we talk about tea, we talk about opium and so on and so forth, but this is one tree which, see, tea probably, you take it for certain sensory stuff. But this tree, in contrast with others that we have talked and others we might talk later about, stands out in a manner, as I say, I don't know who said this, more lives have been saved by this one compound quinine than all lives that have been killed by all wars in the world
I see.
so far.
I see.
So you can imagine the sort of impact that this has had on human lives, besides of course the colonization that British had in Africa and in India. And to the same token, Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of UK between 1940 and 45, and Churchill, is a really strong character.
Yeah.
For him to tell this, if I remember verbatim, I can repeat this one. He mentioned that more lives and more minds of Englishmen has been saved than all doctors put together by quinine.
I see.
This is a statement.
Okay. Now let me come back to your original statement you told. That is, quinine has saved more lives than what has been killed by all the wars.
Yes.
So it runs to then millions and millions.
Absolutely.
I see.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if we can then now let us say make two statements about quinine. Number one, it led to the free walk of white into Africa and India without fear of malaria.
Yes.
In that way, the occupation,
In fact,
geographic occupation.
Permit me to say this. It's said again, the bullets and the bayonets did not win or gain access for the British to all of these places.
It is the quinine.
It's the quinine.
So in other words,
Dr. Natish.
It is the arm that holds the quinine and takes it.
So in other words, so quinine has led to the occupation or migration of white into Africa and Asia.
Yes.
Despite malaria, and in that sense it has changed the history. Number two, it also has now saved so many human lives because of its discovery than perhaps humans themselves have killed of others because of wars.
I was just trying to remind you that when we were all growing up, there was this national malaria eradication program even in India, even as late as the 70s
I know.
and the 80s. Malaria was a big scourge even in India, and the country had to take up a special
So in other words, the concoction of quinine in the form of gin tonic or whatever it is was one reason why the British could establish in Africa and Southeast Asia so strongly and could now, let us say, change the geography of the world.
In fact, since you mentioned Africa, I just remembered, it's called the Scramble for Africa.
Scramble for Africa.
Scramble for Africa. The European colonizers want to gain entry to Africa, and that was called the Scramble for Africa.
Everyone
and
are fighting
for long
among.
times, the Scramble for Africa was not successful because of malaria, and quinine opened the doors to Africa because of
And that led to a lot of other things like slavery. We'll talk about.
It's
Yeah.
called
In
the
fact, I
Black
don't know.
Continent,
Yeah.
right?
I would like to just make an anecdote for people who may be listening in.
Yeah.
This opened doors for colonization,
Mm.
surely. But I would like to recall to you, Ganesha, the time that we spent in Grahamstown
Mm.
in South Africa.
Yeah.
Now, in the Eastern Cape, what happened is, I'm not saying it's because of quinine,
Yeah.
but quinine probably paved the way for the English settlers
Mm.
in South Africa.
Mm.
And we saw the monument. It's called.
Okay, remember, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
It's
yeah.
called the monument is called the sort of British occupation markers.
Mm. Mm.
So this is a monument, and these monuments are not just in South Africa; they are there in many parts of the world where the
But
English
particularly in
settlers
South Africa, they preserved
Yeah.
one monument
So
which we.
in the monument, it's a stone monument, and you go, there's a central pillar, and from the pillar are stone arrows pointing to different directions, and in each arrow a surname is given, for example, Shackleton or Smith, and that. So this arrow indicates that the Shackletons can go as far as they can in the direction of the arrow, occupy how much ever land they want, and of course colonize that place.
I also would like to know, Adier, that among the British Royal, there was a system where the second and the third son will not have any rights to now occupy, and they were sent to now these kind of places to all. So some Shackleton or some Smiths could be some royal families. We saw this pillar, I only had heard in legendary stories, a man was asked to now go and walk around how much space he wanted. He was very greedy, but he went but couldn't come back before the sunset.
Tolstoy's story.
Yeah, but literally we saw this in South Africa. But